Good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are in the world, you are here right now, and for that we are grateful. I am Richard Dolan, and I'm delighted to be here with you this evening with my dear friend, my partner, the real Brad Lea. I know he'll be joining me shortly, but I want to do a little bit of a roll call because I've got to say it's been some time since I've seen a good number of people. And if you're just seeing me for the first time, if this is the first time we've connected in a Zoom way, put yourself in the chat room. Love to know that you're here and particularly where you're from. Like I think, Dan, you and I have seen each other. I may have seen you, Kevin Daniels. You look familiar to me. Always working. I see you. Always working. I see Joshua in the house and Matt Roos. I see Rich. What's up, Jano? It's good to see Bloodstone in the house. But then I see old friends. I see Randy Dick. I see Mark Jean, the amazing Danny Lombardi. I see Danielle Tucci. I see Tracy Clary. I see the real Keith UT. I see a lot of dear friends from all sides of the borders. Great to have you here. It's the delight. In some ways, it feels like a reunion for some of my graduates. For me, it feels like it's just been yesterday since I last saw you all. And I'm delighted about tonight and what we're doing because Brad Lea and I got together and thought to ourselves, what could we do in 2024 so people can have more? And as we get started, I want to just go into the chat room and take a look and see who is in there, just to take a peek and see who I see. Oh, man, we got a lot of people in from Canada. It's great to see Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Saskatoon, a lot of Toronto, a lot of Montreal. Bonjour, ça va? From the stateside, I see a lot of folks. I see Joshua Smith from Georgia. I see Dallas in the house. What's up, Tyler? I see Newport Beach. I see Tennessee. I see, who else do I see here? Wisconsin in the house. I see the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, not to be confused with the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. It's great to have Vienna in the house. Good to see you, Mark Jean, Money Machine from Beverly Hills, 90210. But hey, let's just pause for a moment to let the real Brad Lea. And Brad, what is going on? Good day, good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, brother. How are you doing?
Man, if I was any better, I would be Richard Dolan.
Hey, I'm not going to lie. That sounds about right. That sounds about right. We're in good company, Brad. We got Eduardo Robles in the house. We've got Louis in the house, Shem, William, Margito. What's up, my man? We got a lot of bomb squad in the house. Christopher Hopkins is here. Justin Manning is here. We've got James in the house and plenty more. But Brad, listen, man, I want to make sure that we're true to form. We're on schedule as promised, man. First and foremost, it's so good to be here with you digitally and live. With my friends, your friends, now our friends. I was sharing with folks just before you entered that when you and I were chatting a bit about 2024, you said it's got to be about more. You want to be very intentional. You want to cause and create, a statement I make often, cause and create what comes next, because you've been a phenomenon by default and not design. I mean, you're a heavyweight teacher. You are a technologist through the means of technology and light speed, but you've got this incredible podcast. You're a community generator and you're the best connector. And so it's great to be a part of the conversation with you about working together and doing more in 2024 for the Bomb Squad, for all things real, and of course, all things us. So I just want to say thank you from my bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for having the faith and the friendship with me to do just that.
Well, as you know, it's my pleasure. And not only that, it's my mission. You know, my mission in life is to get the knowledge from the people who have it to the people who need it. I think that stems from, you know, my dad being such a hard worker and not really financially getting anywhere. And then, you know, here I am, high school dropout, end up multimillionaire. Like, how did that happen? And by the way, people doubt what I'm saying, but I don't really work that hard. Well, how do I, you know, make sense of that? Well, I make sense of it because, you know, I got the right information, right? And did something with it. He didn't have the right information. So for some reason, when I think, man, how do I get the right information to the right people, dude, it fires me up. And this is one of them. Why? Well, because, Rich, as you know, a lot of the success that I've had is my ability to speak and communicate and sell and persuade. And I'm an amateur compared to you. So when you said, you know, hey, let's do something together, I'm like, dude, this is crazy. Are you kidding me? Let's do it, man. I know a lot of people that if they had a little bit of help would make a massive difference in what they're doing. Not only, you know, for themselves financially, their businesses, but from a personal perspective, their lives, their relationships. There's going to be marriages improved because they know how to speak and communicate a little bit better. They understand these things. It's going to just overall help a lot of people. So I'm thankful to be a part of it.
Well, I'm grateful that we're going to take the lead now. And as you folks have heard from the man himself, we're going to get started because, before I even delve into what often happens in a Zoom room like this, is we go straight into an agenda, and you've got this incredible deck that you'll get to watch and see, and it'll just whiz on by. But there's three things I promise you. Number one is I'm going to share with you why this is important to Brad and I. We're going to share it with you. Number two is we're going to teach you something that you likely didn't know, or you knew, but were quite resisting the idea of remembering. And number three, I'm going to sell you. I mean, we're not here just to educate and do that for free. If you're going to be free, you got to do it with me. And so for me and Brad, we got to do this together. I mean, for a lot of my students, and if you are a former student of Rich U, or you are a part of Rich Mastery or any of my programs, please say hello. So friends of Brad's, his family members, the bomb squad knows that I'm not alone. I mean, folks know that I do not do this program often. I do not do it consistent. And why? Because it is epic. And before I even get started, let me just tell you how it did. Y'all with me? Just give me a thumbs up if this is tracking. This is tracking cool? Fantastic. Oh, I see Christopher Hopkins with a double thumbs up in the house. Is that your lady there? Who's there? Who's there? Tell me who's there. Put it in the chat room. I want to know. I just only see Christopher Hopkins, not Christopher and Mrs. Hopkins. I need to know who that is. All right, so check this out. When I got started in the business of selling stuff, what's up, Jen Moore? When I got started, I did not come from the Lucky Sperm Club. I wasn't born kosher, nostra, and I certainly didn't come from the Lucky school either. I was built and I was bronzed to do what I do. I was really, quite frankly, a weaponized salesperson. Quite frankly, I don't know about you, but I was hungry, I was starving, and I was single. So I had no one else to rely upon but me to get to where I got to go. So why it's important for you to hear that is because I was not born this way. I was built this way. And if you're making any notes, this is the perfect time to start. I would write that down. I wasn't born this way. Neither were you, Randy. Even though you got some good looks, you were likely born with those good looks. But I think that accident may have helped you a little bit. Didn't hurt you. I think Ken, he's still got a long way to go. And Mark Jean is always a sexy machine. And because we've got Jen in the house, Christopher looks better. Christopher looks better. And so this list goes on. But I wasn't born this way. I was built this way. So when I began to sell services and products, when I began to be in front of people, one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many, I would often get from friends, family, students, clients, and customers saying, hey, how did you learn to communicate the way you did? And I would begin to share what I had learned, what book I read, what workshop I had gone through, what second-degree burns I incurred by running across a burning bed of coals, and the list goes on. And what I began to do was I'm just going to reach for it right here, is I have these. I have notes, and I would take notebooks upon notebooks of a plethora of experiences and insights I gathered, I consolidated, I was beginning to codify what I learned. Now, if you're tracking this, you'll get this because you're writing notes in a book that matters to you. So why I'm saying all this is to say this. It took me 35 years to learn how to teach what Brad and I will be doing in Vegas in just over 2 days. The difference, though, and I'm excited about this one, is that it's combining both what Brad has done to build his real ecosystem of companies, businesses, and enterprises, not just his profile, his business, his podcast and such, but also combine it with what I've done with the same skill set. So for tonight, I need you to know this, that this is really, truly a gift I'm sharing with you. And it's not a gift as in the skill set gift. It's a gift of knowledge. Y'all get that? Just give me a thumbs up if that tracks. It's a gift of knowledge. It's not mine to have. It's Brad and I's to share. And so I want to make sure you know that at the very bare minimum tonight, inside the next 52 minutes, you will get a sense of what it means when I say, and I want you to write this down, this skill set is the greatest one you can ever have. And I do mean ever. This is, friends, the greatest skill set you can ever master. You master communication, you will master yourself. If you master communication, you will master influence. If you can actually build communicative prowess for yourself in all that you do, personally, professionally, commercially, you will move the needle wherever you go. Because the only instrument of impact beyond your body, mind, and soul is your voice. And not just the one you project, but also the one you hear inside here. So does that track? Just double thumbs up, unless you're driving. put those thumbs back to work. I see a couple folks driving. Don't want you swearing off the road. So Brad, are we ready to roll, man? And you always are mic live. So whenever you want to just give me a pause, jump on in and add a few real bombs, you are always welcome, my friend. So let me go into the share the screen to see just the heck what we're talking about. So it goes without saying, I mean, just like absolutely first and foremost, welcome to all of you. Now, as I said earlier on, this thing's got three parts. There's going to be a who, there's going to be a why, and there's going to be a what. Now, for me, it's really important that you all know who is really up here chatting away. Now, without going into who I am and what I've done, I've got to tell you that it's taken me 30 years to perfect the art and the science of communicating to people. And I don't just mean one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many. I mean, I've had the opportunity of being in boardrooms that only had a person or two. I've had the opportunity of being in a room where there's hundreds more. I've had the chance of being inside an audience that measured 40,000 people strong. And I've got to tell you one bare truth. I was scared shitless. I got to be real with you. I didn't have the skill set, the confidence, or the self-worth to let me even belong in that room. But there was absolute skills I learned. There was actual tricks that I actually gained. And there was a prowess that I became. Prowess meaning fearlessness. I was able to attach myself to all these insights. So why I share that with you is this, is that my whole background is I'm a money guy from design. I was born on Bay Street, built on Wall Street. I made 300 cold calls a day, every day as a full-time job. That's what I did when I first started. So to go from Bay Street to Wall Street, from Wall Street to the NBA, and then the highest levels of influence and impact, I've got to tell you, I've worked with over 100 different legends, icons, and gods of commerce and culture. People who had an irrevocable, irresistible, imminent, and inescapable truth about their impact and who they were. I got to learn from the best, my friends. That's why I created an accredited education. That's why I went on to counsel, advise, and work with some of the most iconic brands on the planet. Chanel, Porsche, Jumpman Inc., Lakers, just to name a few. That said, though, it led me to go and become a performance expert. So with a background in human behavior, I wrote the book that became the staple for the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, MLB, and Formula One. So what's cool is that I'm really well-rounded. But enough about me. Let's talk about why this matters. Why does Richard say, why is Brad affirming that communication is the greatest skill to have ever? Well, let's walk into this material. You see, friends, to set the context, understand a few things. The degree and depth of success that you experience in business, relationships, enterprise, and Brad hit the nail on the head. Whether you're having a relationship with your son, your daughters, right, Bianca? Your daughters, whether you're grown children, right, Daniela? Or whether all those rascals, right, Vincent? It's equal and proportionate to the quality of communication you exercise. And you see, friends, what we know is that history's most memorable and powerful leaders, inventors, innovators, and politicians were masterful. Folks, I mean impeccable at communicating and connecting with people. To attract more, become more, and have more, I would assert, and I know Brad agrees, that you must increase your communication prowess, effectiveness, and mastery. If you're making notes, I would write down the final sentence, that which you see in bold. Communication prowess, effectiveness, and mastery. Prowess being fearlessness, effectiveness meaning impact, and of course, mastery, being able to repeat the process and doing that more. Now, I'm going to say this again because it's so important. It is the single greatest skill ever. So whether you're in sales and marketing, whether you're a digital marketer, whether you're a stay-at-home mom and or a hardworking man, whoever you are and however you identify, communication is the single greatest skill ever. You see, what I've come to know is that in all the time I've been doing this, we've had this opportunity of turning around things. First and foremost, stuck. I'm gonna have to come out of this screen share because I'm stuck. Oh, there we go. My personal, hold on, I'm gonna pause because I actually feel like I just dropped out for one single moment. Has this ever happened to you guys? When you're in the middle of a Zoom meeting and all of a sudden you think you lost your audience? Has it? Thumbs up? Oh, Randy, you're giving me a quick thumbs up. That made me feel so much better and rescued. All right, Randy, because you're being so cooperative with me, tell me, brother, do you see my screen right now? Vincent, do you see the white screen back up? All right, fantastic. Thank you, my friend. So setting the context as I bring it back up, my personal success is a direct result of what I've learned, mastered, and embodied inside the domain of communication from these greats. And what I'll assert is the fact that this communication technology, and I would write that down, communication technology. You know, oftentimes I've heard Brad talk about this thing called a system. Remember that, Brad? People need a system. And I say it like the same way, but I would say it that way. It's a communication technology. A system is the same way. Technology and system live inside the same logistic, linguistic structure. Communication technology is a non-negotiable life skill if living life on your terms really matters. These are skills and techniques and approaches that are really learnable. They are not elements of a miracle. So just because you were effective, just because you spoke and you were heard, doesn't mean it's an isolated phenomenon, a miracle in the making. It has to be repeatable for you to continue building it up. I worked with Tony Robbins for over 17 years, and I learned that firsthand. And in all this time that we're going to be doing this preview, I'm going to organize three things: the powerful argument for why communication skills matter more now today than ever before, present the history root cause for why we are challenged to speak up and express ourselves fully. So you're gonna get a lot of value for tonight. I know that this is a sales preview. We want you in Las Vegas for 2 days with myself and Brad Lea live, but we want to make sure that you came here tonight and got some value. But then, of course, what I will wrap up is I'm going to share 4 of the top 10 mistakes we all make, including me, from time to time when we aim to communicate, connect, and converse with others. So by bringing awareness to the errors in which you imminently will make, will actually detract you from making them yet again. So why don't we start with the idea of doing just this? Let's provide this powerful argument for why communication skills matter more today than ever before, and we'll move on from there. You see, why communication matters really comes down to understand that many times it isn't until you speak with people and interact with others and in person, not by text, not even by Zoom, but when you have a visceral, I would write that down, that which you see in bold, visceral connection. Like, Brad, it wasn't only until I was in your studio, under your hospitality, having a wonderful conversation that we actually had that connection. True? Thumbs up, brother? You get what I'm saying?
True.
And that visceral connection really catalyzes collaboration, community, conversation. And that motivates people to adopt your idea, welcome you into their world. It all comes down to how the ideas are communicated. So that visceral communication, that visceral connection comes down in 3 parts. Physiological, which is the body, voice and tones. If you notice, my voice goes up and down, the tones I've got and the way in which I enunciate, but also the words and language in which I use creates an impeccability in the way in which I deliver them. You see the point? So you'll notice just that as a dashboard, my body will match my voice, will match my tone, my words and language. So if I were able to say to you that, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, my name is Richard Dolan. What I might do full time is I train and educate people, but I'm really excited about my merchant solution system. And why that's important is because people are struggling with saving money, expanding margin, and preserving and protecting their life savings called their business. So that matters to you as much as it matters to me. Tell me, when can we have a cup of conversation to talk about that? A cup of coffee at your expense, but I will deliver. See the point? That was for you, by the way, Brad, a little ad lib there for one of our wonderful businesses. So the point here is this, the distinction is quite quick. You want to make sure you present, speak, and communicate. Now, write those 3 terms down, please. I know you're thinking, Rich, you're making me do work. I put in a full day, or I've already got the kids and the dog's asking me where dinner is. I know, but remember, when you write things down, you hardwire them permanently. You don't make notes, this won't matter. So this is a matter of what I also teach inside the 2-day program, that engagement empowers encouragement. So when you write things down, as I say, and I know I'm getting a little bossy here, but forgive me, this is about you, not me. When you write down the terms present, speak, and communicate, those are the governing principles of what really makes you a greater communicator. Let's start with the distinctions of what each of those mean. Now, present, by way of just definition, is to introduce, especially with formal ceremony. It's to bring before the public. That's what it means to present. One can argue that I right now, given the fact that I'm in a large room, we've got hundreds online here live, we will have hundreds more watching the replay. This is a format called presentation. Now, what's interesting though, is that when we look at speak as a term, as a distinction, the term speak actually is to utter words or articulate sounds with ordinary speech, modulation, or what you and I have come to call talk, just keeping it real. What happens here, though, is to convey your thoughts, opinions, or emotions orally really is to express oneself. I would write down to express oneself. Because when people think that they're on stage, that they do not wish to express oneself, there's a collapse. This is where authenticity was born as a term, as an experience for self and others. More on that later. Now, the difference there, though, when it comes to these distinctions, and here it comes, I love this one, it's to communicate. You see, friends, by definition, communicate means to share or exchange information, news, or ideas. It also means to impart or pass on. And it is to succeed in conveying one's ideas or in evoking understanding in others. But best of all, it's to transmit. Transmit what? By definition, heat or motion. Now, by the way, pause for a second. Who here, if just by way of giving me double thumbs up, do you feel the energy of just how I'm speaking to you? Just yes or no. By the way, for every thumbs up, I get paid. I get paid. Come on, guys. Well, a couple guys just don't want me to get paid tonight. That's cool. Some of you do. Some of you are very generous. That doesn't look like a foot. That looks like a foot, actually. Transmit heat. Because when you're able to communicate, it should evoke a transmission of heat or motion. It's also evidenced by mood. So why that's important when it comes to understanding the distinctions of presenting, speaking, and communicating, especially the term transmit. Transmit is really to cause something to pass on from one person to another. This is what gets really authentically cool about what Brad does, for example, especially if you listen to the Bomb Squad, like when he's dropping bombs, like the name Bomb Squad is the term in which we're identified as, but dropping bombs being the show, is that when he's causing something to pass from what he's doing and what others are doing in that room, from that room to others, that's the transmission. That's what's really particularly interesting. It's also to allow heat, light, sound, electricity, or other energy to pass through a medium. Who here would agree that you're the medium? Show of hands? That's it. So you're really an instrument of a transmittance of energy, light, sound, etc. What we know to be true is this is what it means to communicate, to be a medium for an idea or emotion. If you're taking pictures, recording, or have a camera handy who could take a picture of this I would take a picture of, and do not forget it. You are all instruments to transmit, by way of being a medium, an idea or an emotion. And it's evidenced by generating the other person to be engaged, to be caused to move or remember. So why is that important? Well, as I promised that we would provide all this really wonderful insight and such, let's get on to the second part. When we look at conditions inducing a root challenge, what we've come to know is that when it comes to the way in which we communicate, oftentimes what's under the surface is we often are looking for permission. Permission to speak, permission to be heard, to be of consent or authorization. What we know is that as toddlers, our parents who ingrained in us at that stage in your life to never speak when adults are speaking. When you were then a student, you were never able to speak unless you had a hand up. And in fact, if you weren't the boss or in the room in charge, you weren't the one who was able to interrupt those who were in fact well expressing or were appointed an authority. So we've been conditioned in society to ask. We're not wired to not require it. So when it looks up through the conditions of inducing this root challenge, what we've come to learn is that we then, if we can move past permission, we also seek unknowingly endorsement. You see, what I've come to know when we would teach these programs is people often are waiting to be heard, waiting to speak or really express themselves. That endorsement, by definition, is an approval or support. But when you ask yourself, where does that really come from? The endorsement actually is a matter of proof, merit, and therefore being encouraged to speak with authority. So a lot of times when people think that they lack confidence or conviction or clarity, it's all actually self-governance, from seeking permission to seeking endorsement. The next one, the newest one that we've discovered, is seeking acknowledgement. Seeking acknowledgement is another massive dysfunction when it comes to people being able to express themselves. Acknowledgement, by definition, is the acceptance of truth and existence. People don't want to just be heard, they want to be seen. Isn't that true for a lot of people? So when you think of acceptance by others, it's most important to note that a greatest part of your learning, developing yourself professionally and personally, is accepting not just what others think of you, but what you think of yourself. This is the acknowledgement we really need to untap, because what is true then determines and defines the existence of how you present, how you speak, how you're heard, and how you hear the world. So when we look at these distinctions and you understand the conditions themselves, the root challenge comes down to having a fear of being judged. It is one of the three, what we call keepers. We cover this conversationally and scientifically in the workshop. We ultimately fear being judged. Why is that important? Well, because being judged is an opinion decision based on observation. It's the act or process to form an opinion. And it's the act of judging someone, but more importantly, it's the someone we're concerned about, the self, the peer, and the results. This leads to judgment. So one of the first things we'll do inside the workshop is we crack what is the source of where you fear being judged by self, by others, and the results being seen by you. What's interesting about all this is that when it comes to understanding this root cause for what's going on, what we've come to learn and understand is this, is that you've got to deconstruct your voice. I would write that down. What does it mean to deconstruct your voice? Well, we've got really only time for 4 mistakes of the 10 that we see are most common. This thing just skipped ahead. My goodness, I understand why Apple's misbehaving with me tonight. So let's just take a look and see where it just skipped out. Hold on. There we go. So sharing the 4 of the top 10 mistakes, what we just covered was we presented the history root cause for why we're challenged to speak up and express ourselves. Yeah, the acknowledgement, the fear, then of course, the acknowledgement. The 4 of the top 10 mistakes we make when aiming to communicate, connect, and converse with others starts with this one right here. Number 1, we imitate. We imitate. What does that mean to imitate? Well, we imitate rather than emulate. You know, Brad, the other night when we were hosting one of the coaching sessions, that was amazing, Brad, if you remember. We were going through a workshop. I had delivered some great content. We had a good number of folks that were there on the call. And after speaking the way I did, he emulated me. He didn't imitate me. He hit a line where it almost sounded like he was making fun of. And it wasn't a making fun of. It was actually, I didn't land that way. He was emulating it, because the way you know the difference between imitating rather than emulating is the net result you get from the listener. So I was actually moved and quite impressed that he learned a number of skills just in the 90 minutes we were on a call together, and he emulated them. Y'all get that? Just give me thumbs up. So emulating is different from imitating. You see, when you pretend to be someone or something you're not, people can tell. And you know the worst part is, you know that too. So there's a disconnect with being authentically you when you're trying to take on being a certain way, trying on a skill that's not yours, doing a certain style or approach that isn't innately you, and it feels foreign. It's like a bolt-on rather than a built-in. It is very tempting to imitate your favorite speaker or top-rated influencer, but what you watch and who you learn from shape the way in which you speak and the words you elect. One of the most important parts about coming to our program is it's time to up-level, increase, elevate the people you see and the words you elect to use, because you become the consortium of conversation in which you take and surround yourself with. So what you want to do is deconstruct your voice, because the voice you've got right now and the vocabulary you have and the way in which you present, 100 times out of 10, I'm going to tell you right now, you're speaking a lot more like you always have. There's very little iteration of how you've changed or evolved over the years. In fact, the older we get, the less of how we speak, communicate, and hear, even listen, change or alter. The second mistake that I'll cover of the 4, given the time that we've gotten, there's lots of other content I got to get to, is we use what we call filler words. Filler words are really tough, especially when you're trying to build communication prowess. Why is that important? Because even in the digital age that's right now and here and upon us, what we need to know is that as we're even hosting and leading our own Zoom and live broadcasts, we will often, in fact, not be prepared. So we'll use lots of catchphrases. You know, my son, who's 17 years of age, I asked him a question the other night. I swear to you, right now, he must have said a dozen times, if he said it once, it's whatever. I know I shared that with a handful of my friends here. It's whatever. Like, dude, what does that even mean? It's whatever, or it's whatever. It's actually a term. It's a filler word. In the absence of him telling me what was really going on, what was really happening, what the real context was, and what the next step is, he couldn't be bothered. Filler words is a demonstration of lack of preparation. So, as presenters, as speakers, as conversationalists, we often don't take the time to really be prepared. We just wing it. And when you wing it, you half-ass it. So, what I give some attention to is the idea of not having too many filler words inside your vocabulary. What you've got to do is you've got to amplify the arsenal of language. You've got to learn new terms. You've got to find new words. You've got to find greater ways and phraseology that's going to really aid, assist, and embolden your delivery. I don't care if you sell shingles, glassware, if you sell wedding planning, or if you're a consultant, a coach, a speaker, or you're just a salesperson. Regardless, the stronger your linguistic set, the stronger your skill set. And those two go hand in hand. Now, let's get to this fourth mistake. We are promotional versus purposeful. I know the world we're in right now is what, Brad and I would come to call the human betterment business. Whether you call it self-help, leadership development, sales development, marketing development, we're in the development space. So it's quite easy to be in this space and seem quite promotional. After all, we are instruments of our own impact. So as we do things like this, it's to encourage people to follow us, to sign up, to subscribe, or attend workshops and classrooms, boot camps, and or just simply show up. But when it comes to understanding promotional versus purposeful, being on purpose is more than just being on point. What you've got to consider is that when you're delivering your talks, your speeches, whether you're giving lectures, lessons, and or coaching, when you're serving a purpose and not an agenda, people feel it. By the way, real quick, who do you think feels that point most of all? Just point real fast. You do. You feel it. You feel it. You feel you're not serving a higher purpose. You're just simply serving an agenda, ticking a box, getting it done, moving on to the next thing. As a result, people don't feel enrolled. They feel sold. And the future of salesmanship and really marketing mastery is about how do we enroll people, not just sell people. Enrolling sounds a little bit like, hey, listen, before I even really came out to this particular showroom, this glassware was something I was looking at just like you. But when I bought my first glass, and every time I took a sip from it, I gotta be honest with you, I feel quite luxurious. It's got this really neat gold rim, and it's got this really decadent feel and pattern. And every time I hold it, I gotta tell you, I enjoy this water far more than any other glassware in my cupboard. Now, let me ask you something. Would you like that kind of experience in your cupboard? Now, I know what you're thinking. Rich, was that rehearsed? I just made that up because I grabbed this glass. I've also got a bottle. I could have done it with this. My point, though, is this, is that by speaking to the experience, I'm sharing more of myself, not my bullet points, not the positives, not the upsell, not the features and benefits. We have to, in sales, move beyond the features and benefits because people feel their way to the sale, not just actually get told into that sale. Sales points are important, but your personal enrollment is even more. So you want to present from your purpose, and that's super important. Now, the last but not least is we must speak more and listen less. That's a big mistake. It's actually the opposite. You've got to listen more and speak less. You see, how you listen shapes how and what you say. It shapes, in fact, the way you experience people and how they experience you. See, how you speak shapes even how they'll determine how they'll decide on doing business with you. So when you look at some of the mistakes we make, we typically don't speak less and leave room to listen more. Now, I understand that this is a workshop. We've got a time constraint, and I want to deliver as much value tonight. So normally if I were really engaging, I would do it right about now. But I don't know if you noticed, but I'll do it by way of thumbs up, double thumbs up. Is that tracking okay? That level of engagement, I'll keep embracing because I want to have a conversation, not just a presentation with you. So leaders really listen. Ultimately and factually, leaders listen. Now, in summary, as we move on to the final part, which is probably the most intriguing, I've already said that the argument for why communication skills matter more than ever before is because communication is the greatest skill set you can ever have, ever. More now than ever before. The history root cause for why we are challenged to speak up and express ourselves fully came down to those three hidden underbellies: the challenge around acknowledgement, our relationship to fear, and understanding how to atone for them. Last but not least is understanding this: the four mistakes. I didn't share 10, but I shared four. The ones we make when aiming to communicate, connect, and converse with others. Now, we'll cover all the rest of that in Vegas. But more on that, let's talk specifically about Las Vegas. Like, why are we doing it? What do you expect? What will we really cover? I mean, it might be important for you to continue hearing why communication matters most of all to you. But rather than me saying it, let me just pause for a minute, come out of screen share, and I'm going to see if a couple folks have their hands up. I'm going to go to Randy Dick for a minute and see if I can unmute him. Randy, I know you've got a podcast. You're a successful realtor. I know you well. And if you don't mind coming on in, what would you gather? Why would you say communication has served as one of the greatest skill sets, I'm sure, for you in recruiting realtors, in doing what you do, in running your podcast, raising dollars, doing real estate deals? I mean, gosh, the list goes on. What would you say to that, my friend?
Well, it is. The art of communication is the greatest gift that I think we as people have. Brad mentioned this off the top, whether it's communicating with your wife, your children, the person across the table from you, it is so important. And you mentioned something about being prepared. 20 minutes of preparation increases my IQ by 20 points, I would say, before I present or before I meet somebody. So it's always about just bringing the best of who you are to the table and communicating with class, ease, and conviction of what you believe in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you said that, my friend. Let me see who else can actually share what they think is important about communication. Louis, I know that you have your hand up there. And if I'm not mistaken, you just hosted a great conference this weekend where you wrangled lots of communicators in there. Tell me, my friend, why would you say communication's likely the greatest skill set one should really have? What's your experience of that? What would you say to that?
Richard, thank you. Wonderful call. Brad, nice to meet you. Communication for me is so critical because it's a relationship that you're building with yourself first. And I learned that at the first Rich Speak. And just to explain that a little further, it's identifying things that are creating blockages in your ego, fear, and judgments. And once you can get those things cleaned up, it allows you to operate on an authentic level. And what that has done for me is allowed me to not only help myself, but start to help other people. And that has been the most powerful transformation for me. So thank you.
And by the way, I will say this only to put you on the spot, because I know you're traveling. I can tell that you are. I would have to assert that when you got your relationship right with communication, you started getting your relationship right with your commitments, with the way you want to live, with the lifestyle you wanted, the things you gave up. Would that be true? Is that pushing you too far?
No, that's very accurate. And it was almost like a weight was lifted off me. I don't know how else to explain it. I just became a lot more authentic.
Awesome. Well, I'm grateful that you got authentic right there with me, man. Safe travels to you and those you're with. Well, let me get straight back to it because, in the time that we've got, and I want to make sure I reserve some of the last words for Brad, I'm excited to bring this program back, largely because it is by far my most enjoyable experience in working with people. I mean, there's nothing better. There's nothing more grand. There's nothing more freeing than to empower people and reintroduce themselves to their real selves. It's amazing. It's so freeing. It's the most incredible work I've ever done. And of all the things I do, it's the one thing I look forward to doing the most. But it takes a great deal of work. And that's why I'm glad I've got someone who's going to share the heavy load, the heavy lifting with those great buys and amazing delts Of course, I'm talking about myself. No, I'm kidding. I'm talking about Brad. Hey, let's continue here, by the way. Now, by the way, I just want to show you something. Check this out. Now, remember, to just recontextualize, this is 41,000 people. I'm going to show you what it's like that when you take a Rich Speak program, you'll be able to do just this. Now, just take a watch. Watch this. Clear walk on. This is a grand opening for Ellen DeGeneres. And what was required was that the minute that light went on, to bring the energy in the room right up. Take a look.
Are we supposed to hear it?
Oh, you can't hear that? Oh, that's horrible. Maybe you can't hear it. My bad. This Mac is really not behaving. It's starting to lose the battle on just why I should really go to Android, but I'll digress. Well, what you saw there, guys, is someone like me who wasn't built to be a communicator. I certainly wasn't born to be one, but you saw me walk on a stage with 40,000 people, and the light goes on, and I quickly went to just getting what I needed to get done. Why I'm saying that is because I could never have fathomed myself doing such a thing. And I'm pretty certain a lot of you wouldn't have fathomed doing that too. So with that being said, and I know, Randy, you got your hand up, but it just went down. Okay, so good timing. Is that what we're going to offer in Las Vegas is a certificate program that features you and shifting your relationship with communication. This is where we're going to develop your professional prowess. I primarily focus on power, presence, and presentation. So this is amazing for leadership development with executives, entrepreneurs, exceptional people seeking more power, more poise, more presence. Now, without getting into the specifics yet again of why it matters and how I built it, the objectives are really multidimensional. It's about refining your mindset and behaviors to enhance your presence as an impactful leader. Get yourself identifying a mission critical set of principles so you can be effective at leadership, at home, at work, in business. You're going to be able to analyze rhetorical strategy as a tool to advance your professional agenda, apply strategic considerations to networking opportunities. By the way, I think networking is getting it all wrong yet again. And there are some, like Jen Carmona, who've got it right. There are some people who are really heartfelt leaders in a space that's littered with poor networking abilities. I think, Randy, you're one of those heavyweights in the EXP world of networking with care, with finesse, with heart. Construct a personal leadership narrative to define your character and vision. So what we get done at the Rich Speak is I focus on making sure that whether you're speaking one-on-one, one to few, or as you just saw in that video, one to many, you're ready to speak to dozens, hundreds, or thousands. And let me just time out for a second. What's really cool about that is I train you as if you were about to. I train you. Brad and I will be right there training you as if you're going to be speaking to 50,000 people. You can't ask me yet why, nor how. I'm going to break down the program in a minute. But the very things that I got trained on how to get ready for the Olympics of performing on a stage, you will endure the same training. So this is a 2-day long program where we're going to have all you guys showing up, getting to understand your vision, your narrative, your ability of frameworking your persuasion, and by the way, causing irreversible transformation in that domain. I want you to write that term down, irreversible transformation. Here's why. The thing about getting trained, developed, attending workshops, Brad, and you've seen this because you go to them every day. You're speaking on stages, you're at conferences, you're in front of thousands of people. Ever notice that people learn lots of stuff, but they apply very little of what they heard? When you learn how to communicate effectively and you experience yourself doing that, it's really hard to not communicate that way you just got introduced to. It's like hitting a high note at the karaoke bar, and you never want to hit a high note again. Nonsense. You're going to be looking for every opportunity in life to hit that high note again because you heard it. It came from you. You got it in you. So the thing about learning communicative prowess is once you're introduced to your real voice and your real ability and your real sense of confidence, you'll notice there's no going back. Irreversible transformation. There ain't no going back. So for us, when we do these programs, we typically like to make sure that we get ourselves organized in such a way that we run a program where we keep things small. We keep things intimate. Our workshops will never be more than about 100 people. Why? Because we work through every single person, everybody. There's no hiding out here. There's no dark corners in Brad's central headquarters. I mean, I'm sure we can find some, Brad, but we already lit this place up where everybody always has to go through evolutions of the training. Everybody. I mean, everybody gets touched. Everyone has a chance to speak. Every person gets the opportunity of refining themselves. Everybody really does have an experience of hearing their own voice. And what you'll learn over 2 days, that as intimidating as it might be, it's a skill set that I, even as a performer and trainer, I go through what we call reconditioning. Every single year, I get reconditioned to speak again. Why? Because every Ferrari needs a tune-up. I don't care if you're a Lamborghini, an F-150, or just a four-cylinder something. You all need to get yourself fine-tuned. So for me, I fine-tune myself. I don't understand why folks don't do it more often. So what do we actually teach? Rich, what is it that you're going to cover? It comes down to 8 things. And in the time I've got left, I'll cover it all. The academic structure follows what I've come to call the communicator's framework. You can take a picture of this like the second most important thing that you'll take a picture of. The communicator's framework really comes down to understanding what shapes our character, what then gives rise to a community, what then gives shape to a culture, and what catalyzes that into money. I mean, whether you're trying to recruit people, raise dollars, sell stuff, or simply just make your relationship rock with your kids, with your wife, and your life, whatever it might be. So the communicator's framework is my intellectual framework in which all the academia lives in. And this is where Brad and I co-conspire to collaborate. So from the context to confidence, from confidence to connection, from connection to conversation, that's what leads to commerce. So it's in between connection and conversation that we start to see the rubber meet the pavement. So there's 8 modules. And this is, a collection of actionable intelligence. And it's beautiful because it's fusing together things that I appreciate and I know Brad demonstrates. I mean, among many things I can say to you about Brad Lea, being in this business for over 30 years, he really isn't called the real deal for nothing. Y'all get what I'm saying? I mean, beyond the fact that we're talking about the era of authenticity, the time for people to keep things real, Brad is a living demonstration of a lot of the things in which we're going to teach. That's why it's going to be so easy to teach it with him. But to give you a clearer sense, in the 8 modules, the first one, we really cover the gamut, the science, and we dive deep into the power of listening. It's your greatest gift, but equally your greatest responsibility. But being able to generate audience is where confidence lives and rebirths itself. So that module, the power of opportunity to communicate effectively, is the first module we cover in day 1. In day 2, or rather module 2, the mind and communication. We dive into the science and chemistry of understanding just how to, in fact, push your agenda forward through voice and communication. You get to different types of sources of your power. You get to recognize the gap that exists between your technical competence and meaningful impact. Getting caught up in your head. Ever get caught up in your head, folks, where you're overthinking something and you get kind of caught up? We also learn about the success cycle of what we've learned in performance psychology and how it serves us as communicator. In module 3, the psychology of presenting and presence, this is where we unleash a lot of our really rigorous science, what I believe Louis referenced as our 3 keepers. This is where we delve deep into some of the science I wrote about when it comes to understanding the things that keep us stuck, small, or stuck. What keeps you small, stalled, or stuck is often the mental conversations we have deep within. But until you unlock those, you can't unleash yourself from them. Now, there's good news and bad news. The good news is you will become unleashed. The bad news is we don't actually look to get rid of them. It's almost like understanding that sometimes when you feel like you're about to take a risk and there's something that holds you back, that's a good thing. You want those guardrails up to keep you preserved and protected. That's just how we're designed. What we don't want to do is pull things out or deprogram you. What we want you to have is a full, complete 360 awareness for what it is that runs you so that you can actually run it. So that's a really cool one. Inside that module, by the way, this is a beautiful picture of Brad I caught him in the jungles of the Amazon there. Beautiful, beautiful gray silverback there, Brad Lea. You look fantastic, by the way. With your birthday just on the 27th, I will say you've never looked better heading into 55, just so you know. But all kidding aside, folks, this is just to express that we do a remarkable exercise called the expansive self. And the expansive self is one of the things that Tony Robbins, when I toured with him, I was trained on how to expand. I'm going to move back here. How to expand a self in such a way that if I were to speak, see how far I am? I can't touch this computer. Y'all see that? I can't touch you. But if I'm able to really project in such a way where if I'm talking to you in such a way that brings one concept over to the other, so that as they both come together, y'all tracking that? I'm just demonstrating expansive self. So how does someone on a stage in front of 10 or 15 or 20,000 people look so big without projectors, without cameras? How do you generate an expansive self? Oh, by the way, when you expand yourself, something orally happens. When you expand yourself, your vernacular changes, your bone structure changes, the way you project changes. You'll experience that in that module. It's fun. It is absolutely a blast, and I guarantee everybody looks silly that day. They all look like Brad Lea, just like that. All right. Module 4, discover the role and relationship to what we have come to call communicative risk. And communicative risk is really understanding how to use presence and poise to amplify your narrative. But we also want to make sure people understand what signals and structures of conversational risks are. Determining the value of team leadership, understanding neurological design of managing and disposing of risk. Said in English, sometimes when we perceive risk conversationally, our bodies have tells. It's like playing poker and losing that poker face. Y'all get that? It's like everyone has a tell. If you've got a great hand or a bad hand, or the person you're playing has got a good hand or a bad hand. I mean, the ultimate guy not to play with poker with is Brad. I mean, he's got the ultimate poker face. He's got the poker face, the poker voice, and the poker cigar. So it's like, I don't even want to play poker with him. I just want to smoke a cigar. But my point is that in conversation, most people don't know that they too have their tells. They have these nervous tics. Their bodies can sometimes get a little bit contracted. Their breathing starts to get a little bit more shallow, just as I'm trying to emulate right now, or they start to speak a little bit faster and they start to lose their voice and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That's communicative risk. So what we do is we distill it so you can see when it shows up for you, because some people have much more of that than others. One of the things that we're going to do brand new to the workshop for all you Rich Mastery, Rich U, and Rich Speak graduates is we've built a proprietary process called the fear compressor. Oh, this is going to be good. We're going to have people literally crossing beams 70 stories above ground. Now, understand it's VR, but people who put these goggles on aren't going to see it that way. They're going to feel it, well, a different way. And to the amusement of everyone else in attendance, it's just sheer fun. This is the moment we serve popcorn and the bar is open. I'm just kidding, but gosh, that would be a great idea. But you get to see people who have their greatest fears of some kind, compress them. So a part of the science in our workshop, and Brad knows this firsthand, is as we get to actually compress your fear. Said a different way, is the reason why my workshop rocks is we compress the things we experience speaking into the workshop. So as you grind that into an experience over 2 days, that fear becomes nothing but dust. It's like, it's irrelevant because you've been there, done that, faced it. Y'all get that? All right. Module 5, as I begin to wind down, is the communicator chemistry. It's one of my favorite modules because we get to really smartly manage your chemistry that fuels your style and enhance your impact. I can't tell you how often people would say, gosh, I don't know what it is. I don't have energy. I feel like I'm sweating like a pig. I don't know how I can get my words gathered. I seem to get all foggy up here. Sometimes people don't realize that a big part of the miscommunication is the mismanagement of your chemistry. Not drinking enough water as a simple must-do, must-have. Drinking too much booze, perhaps smoking too much prior to presenting, and the list goes on. So for some people who can't power through some of these vices or get hung by them, what we do in this module is get clear on what is the chemistry and the balance you must have to in fact perform real well. In module 6, we go through what's called the 10 laws to lead, the communicator's code. We talk about voice, which is your instrument for impact, including sound, articulation, and projection. Presence, the power of communication, absent of sounds, words, or speech. So watch this for a second. Y'all see that? I didn't have to say anything, but you know, I'm engaging you. Who here felt engaged? Who felt looked at, stared on, or picked out on? But I didn't say anything. So that's just a small little 3-second example on Zoom, which is very two-dimensional. Listening is the most vital dimension to communicating with power. Energy is both generated and reverberates within your listener. How do you generate energy in such a way that it's actually sustainable, non-exhaustive, and, well, quite frankly, not embarrassing? I mean, there's not many speakers in the world that can actually pull off a woo like Brad Lea can. That was for you, Brad. I built that into the whole script. That's really important. But I mean, that could also be a real great signal to having energy, having fun and a blast. Symphony, the harmonization of your body, words, and delivery to the audience. Charisma, write that term down because it eludes many of us. Lots of people think, wow, that guy over there has charisma. My God, that lady sure does have a lot of charisma. And people think that we're born with charisma. No. We're not born with charisma. We all have charisma. It's just that you haven't really revealed it yet. You see, it's a magic, it's a power, and it produces grace and greatness. But if you don't reacquaint yourself with it, you ain't going to ever have it. So charisma is the experience you have of yourself and others sense in you as well. We get into the ontological connection, the authenticity of both the experience of you and the experience you have of yourself, presentation, understanding how to frame discussions and outcomes, and one of my favorite, stand. It begins with where you listen and generate engagement from. So, of course, we've got lots to, in fact, choose from. I mean, this just shows you one of our proprietary processes that took place on a beach in Miami called Project and Capture. Now, we ain't in Miami, and we're not close to a beach, but we're going to be in Las Vegas. What this shows you and illustrates that with my last Rich Speak group, we were able to separate the group into two, as you can clearly see here on the beach. And one side is projecting to the other side. It's called Project and Capture. Now, in between those two, lots of people were getting distracted. Why? That's life. We're going to manufacture the same experience in Las Vegas for all of you in a really fun and unusual way. Module 7, the communication leadership tangent. And of course, Module 8, communicating your vision and strategy. This is important to bring it home, to take it to your business, to make money, to turn up your sales, to just get back to business so you can see how did becoming a greater communicator move the needle for you and your business, because that's really important. Now, to wind down, let me share with you this. This group that we're presenting to on those dates are only going to be reserved for 100 seats. We have a silver admission, a gold admission, and a VIP admission. And the biggest difference between really gold and VIP is hanging out with Brad and me. That's really what it comes down to. But I will tell you something about the gold edition. That gold edition is going to include something called the authentication process. Write that down. You will never want to forget it. No one ever does this. No one knows how to do this. I was trained and developed in doing that for 20 years. What is it? The authentication process is where I can take an individual, put them in front of an opportunity on a stage, and in a matter of minutes, I can find the things that stop people from being experienced as authentic. And in doing so and deconstructing it, pulling it apart, or disassembling it, they then become far more authentic for themselves. It was kind of the point I made with Louis, if you guys remember. In the authentication process, Louis, give me a thumbs up if you're cool if I just reference this for a moment, because I know it was your experience. So in his experience, he was a tough cookie. This guy, I mean, he bench presses pickup trucks. He's a developer. He's a construction guy. He's a guy's guy. I mean, it is such a pleasure to hang out with him. Brad will enjoy his company. I know he's definitely coming out to Rich Speak. But in his authentication process, it was tough. It was tough to crack him. He was invincible. I mean, indomitable. I mean, after all, he's a real alpha male's male in a construction business.